Oh, there we go. Sweet. Took a second there. But we're here. Happy Thursday. You know what I like, what I love about these few perfect weeks of the year. It's waking up in the morning, needing to put a sweatshirt on to go out of the house, right? It's a little brisk, a little chilly. And then honestly, right now, what is the temperature right now? Come on, technology. 73 right now, full sun. You could go out there and, get a little sunshine, get your skin a little darker. Man, that's a perfect day, right? All right, hopefully you're enjoying it. Moving on. Principle of the week. Human body needs to move in order to survive and thrive. As the title suggests, this does mean exercise, but it really doesn't only mean exercise, right? This is kind of under our category of movement principles. When Alex and I first kind of started to try to organize, just organize our philosophy of health through these principles, we kind of started with these pillars, right? These pillars of food and movement, rest, then what we call the mind, and then toxins, the category of avoidance. And movement, of course, we in the modern era we believe in exercise, and I think, oh boy, you know how easy it is for me to get just high level and freaking philosophical on stuff. I don't know why. It's just where I go. You think historically, things like sport, right? That's been around forever. Think of children. Bet you I can, beat you to the river over there and take off on a dead sprint. Bet you I can climb this tree. Whatever. That type of sport and play. Those are the same type of elements that we see now in exercise. But also war, right? Actual combat and training. Those are probably some of the most primitive examples of physical training that we see, right? But exercise, hey, this is kind of a new phenomenon, right? Because of modern living, because I'm able to sit here with this. Think about this, right? Like, sit here with this device that is literally bringing you into this room with me. How wild is that, right? And this thing is literally broadcasting to the world right now, right? This is unbelievable. And I can do that by sitting here in this stool, right? And staring at this screen and staring at that screen, right? And because that's what a lot of life looks like for a lot of people, we kind of need to compensate with that, right? Through our introduction of more formal exercise regimens to the masses, right? I would say most people living a modern life need an actual exercise practice, okay? But I'm going to talk about those things a little bit more on the next couple of weeks, okay? Today, it's to say, hey, like, exercise as we know it, right, is really not like this, sacred cow. Like I just said, necessary for modern life, but it's really this understanding that your body is not meant to be sedentary, right? In order to have the things we have, in order to have the modern conveniences we have, we started from a garden. started from an uninhabited Earth, right? We started from this position of all there is abundant resource, right? And it took the labor of man to develop and cultivate all the things that we experience, right? Like this camera and this computer, like the nice little, the technology that goes into forming the stones and bricks that I'm looking at that are holding back the dirt on the opposite side of this retaining wall on the opposite side of my parking lot, right? Like all of this stuff. We had to work the ground in order to get where we are. And tons of it is luxury, but one of the downfalls is it has made us a physically incompetent people, right? Because we don't have to do things like grow our food and, pull materials out of the earth and all of this stuff, right? Modern life is pretty darn bougie. So obviously we already said we need the exercise, but just in general, your body functions best when it is on the move, right? When you are not sedentary, right? So even the the standing thing, right? I could get rid of this stool and I could be standing here right now. And that in a lot of circumstances is better than sitting down. I'm not limiting my hip flexion and extension and all that stuff, right? But it's still sedentary, right? It's still standing still. And movement is really a goal we shall have. Okay, so remembering, hey, we're in the education phase here. Walking through our principles, excuse me. So the first question is, hey, do you get 10,000 steps every day? Right. So first, there's a little prerequisite to having that data. You got to wear a device like this to be able to get that. But I would say that is such an easy thing to do. You can get a device or a watch or something for not very much money. It really doesn't require anything of you other than some real estate on your wrist, and you can get a pretty one and whatever. But it without much thought, without much friction, I can peek down here and I can see, okay, it's 10:52 and I'm at 4,000 steps on the day. Okay. Yeah, and it's a phenomenal assessment tool that is able to give you this snapshot of, hey, not just did you squat this morning, right? Did you elevate your heart rate, but unless you're a runner and you're going, a distance and you can accumulate, loads and loads of steps in a short amount of time. For the most part, most of us who aren't distance runners, the amount of steps we take in a day is a really, really, really good metric of, hey, just how mobile were you today? How much did you move around, and conversely, how much did you stay still? And this mark of somewhere around 10,000 steps a day is, there's been some research that's done that says, hey, like if you're below this, I think there's some stuff that says somewhere between 8,000 and 12,000, right? If you're below this threshold, that's kind of what they deemed as a sedentary lifestyle. So super, super, super simple, easy way to kind of just put some objective measurement behind it. And wearing this device is so easy to do, right? So I'm a big fan of wearing something that'll give you some feedback on your steps. Next question. Do you eliminate optional sitting? Okay, now I'm going to give a qualifier here. If you have a job where you're on your feet all day long. If you want to, show up at your kid's baseball game and continue to be on your feet and stand to watch, or be, walking around playing with the kids at the park and blah, 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 like, great, phenomenal, okay? But also, going back to the first question, you probably already got that, and it's not that sitting is bad, right? Sitting's awesome. Sitting is a fantastic way for your body to just relax, right? And to start to down regulate. At the end of a long day, I know that if I sit down on the couch or something, there's going to be just this rush of down regulation. I'm probably going to fall asleep, right? And, the modern chair is designed to allow you to just shut off completely, right? The same reason why it's a terrible idea to do it all day long is also the thing that makes it kind of glorious, right? But for those of us who do live a more modern lifestyle and work on computers and stuff, we have opportunities where sitting might be common, but not necessary, right? So, like, if you're in a lecture hall and it's like, it would be disruptive for you to, get up and fidget or move around or whatever. Like, okay, right. If you have to drive in the car for, you're on a road trip, that sitting is not really optional, right? Movie theater, okay, same type of thing. But certainly, like, there are other opportunities where, like, hey, you do take the kids to the park and you're not really, like, playing with them. You don't have to, like, sit on the bench. Maybe you should be playing with them, right? Maybe that is the punchline there. But, instead of sitting on the bench and watching, hey, get up, right? And even if they're kind of doing something on their own, like, be on your feet and pay attention with them, and you can be engaging with them without, like, having to do whatever, or hey, you probably should just play with them. But there are those opportunities where, hey, it might be like common practice to be still, be seated, whatever. But there are opportunities for you to start to eliminate some of that, additional sedentary time, right? On the flip side of that, do you take movement breaks during required sitting time, right? So, for example, the road trip, okay? You can take a break before people have to pee, right? It doesn't have to just be a bathroom break or a gas fuel break. It could be hey, I've been in this closed hip position for a long time, and I want to get out and jog a little bit and open up my hips, right? I want to, get down in a deep squat and jump out of it, right? I want to do some push-ups, do some burpees, even just walk, right? Breaking up that with, just a little bit of movement is a really, really good idea. Same thing as sitting at the desk, right? One of the things I used to tell people who were like, office workers or whatever is, hey, if you drink a bunch of water throughout the day, you're going to have to get up and pee pretty regularly. And then we're, kind of doing two good things at once, right? Just different little hacks, It could be the device that gives you the, hey, why don't you, stretch your legs a little bit, time to stand up, whatever it is, do those things. And yeah, it might be weird to get up, and if you've, have access to something you can hang on or sit in a squat or, go for a walk. Smokers get smoke breaks. How about healthy folks get walk breaks or something like that, You can be super creative with this sort of stuff. Buddy of mine, he is on video calls all the time, right? And he's telling me that the past week or so he's been taking his laptop down to, he's got a treadmill in his garage, and he just been taking his laptop down to the treadmill, setting it up there, and he's just walking on the treadmill while he's on these calls, right? And he said he did it, and he was wearing a weight vest while walking on the treadmill while on a Zoom call, right? It's like, it's kind of weird, right? But what's normal and what's common is sickness and chronic disease. So I think it's worth it to be a little weird and to maintain your health. Okay? That's all I got to say about that. Last question here is, do you move and fidget and change positions when you do have to sit, right? So even here, I've got this stool that's got the little rollers on it, right? And like that little bit of movement, right? I got to push with my arms. I, got to flex and extend and rotate through my midline. This table has this little bar across the bottom, little stretcher on the bottom that, when I'm standing, throw your foot up on there, right? And take it down and switch it, right? And, you're sitting in a seat and doing one of these and throwing your leg up, right? And, all of this stuff, right? That's good for you. Okay? Like the fact that we understand this with our children, right? It's hard for them to sit still. Like, yes, they need to learn to be a little disciplined with that and be able to focus and have attention, right? But like the need and the desire for the body to be moving, to be at play, like whatever it is, it's good, right? How about, everybody knows this move. You get a phone call and you stand up and you start pacing around, right? Those are the types of things that it's like it's very natural, right? It's good, right, to have increased blood flow, oxygen to the brain, makes you think. Like all of this stuff is if we just were to observe, it's like it's kind of common sense, right? So, I think you can do this naturally, but you can also do this kind of intentionally as well, right? Sometimes I'll just take my computer and throw it down on the floor, right? And I'll have to get on the floor and, be in a cross-leg position, be in a little like straight leg position, be in a lunge and a squat and this leg up and that leg up. And it just giving yourself opportunity for that type of movement, like that's a good aim, right? Be in an environment. So yeah, it's not, I already mentioned the standing desk type of stuff. It's not that standing is outrageously superior to sitting. It is, but it's still sedentary. But what it does is it gives you just a little bit more of that opportunity to move and change position and fidget and to actually get a little bit of that movement in there, right? Even when I'm sitting here talking, right? Like I'm moving around and using my friggin' hands and going left and right. Like I don't necessarily do that much of this when I'm just sitting here typing, right? But the fact that this is just a little bit more engaging, right? I got to think about like carrying on a conversation with nobody here. That's just enough that I start doing these things just naturally and really subconsciously, because your brain and your body likes it, right? Again, it's kind of common sense. All right, so I've been hinting at this for a while, but this week, kind of a shift in our programming with the classes. I love straight up the middle CrossFit. And what's kind of funny, I did notice this the other day, how in part, okay, so a little bit of backstory here. Man, I'm going to go over my time. I'm approaching that 20-minute mark already. It's okay. CrossFit.com for a long time has been a 3-on, 1-off program, right? 3 days of work, 1 day of rest, and just continue that for eternity. They have broke that a few times recently as they've had some guest programmers on where it's like, hey, let's, instead of working on this strange 3 or 6 day cycle, how about we stick to the calendar, right? And say, let's be off on Wednesdays and Sundays or Thursdays or whatever, right? So a lot of times what you'll see in that program is 2 of those days you might see a, metabolic conditioning type of, what you think of when you think CrossFit, right? Mixed modalities, do this thing for time, time priority, task priority, those sort of things. And then one of those days would be what they call a heavy day, right? It's not necessarily, I don't think it's explicitly always this like 2-1 type of thing, although often I think it is. I could be wrong. But it's like, hey, they're in training for if the thing we're seeking is fitness, okay, work capacity across broad time and modal domains, it doesn't always mean every day get your heart rate up, right? Get your heart rate up, work to peak intensity, okay? Intensity is relative to the task, okay? So while we know that intensity is this kind of X factor, this thing that does drive results, it's not only in an aerobic sense, for example. And even there we see, hey, there are lots and lots and lots of days where we don't do that, right? We don't get our heart rate up, for example. And so that is something that, basically I program 5 days a week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And at least for the next 8 weeks, this week being week 1, there's going to be 2 of those days that we don't have that extended get your heart rate up type of thing, right? What a lot of times I just blanketly call conditioning, right? It changes and varies a lot with what falls under that category. But there's going to be 2 days explicitly where the priority is on other elements and not that, right? And then on the flip side, there's going to be basically those are going to be Mondays and Fridays. I have tried not to do this for a long time of basically saying, hey, Monday is always going to be this type of thing, right? We're always going to squat on Monday. That's still not true. Tuesday's bench day and whatever. I for a long time I've tried to kind of oscillate some of those things. I don't know if I'm using that word correctly, but mix those things up. So somebody who comes only on Mondays, for example, wouldn't always only be training the same thing, right? People have different schedules, they miss certain things, and I want people with those limitations to still have some of that variability, right? But I'm going against that just a smidge. So basically, Mondays and Fridays are going to be those kind of primarily strength and either Olympic weightlifting or some hypertrophy stuff in there. I'll explain that here in a second. And then Tuesday, Thursdays, once a week in the class, we're going to maintain a traditional, metabolic conditioning type of workout, right? This could be benchmarks or those sorts of things, right? Today was that day. Three different movements, a gymnastics, weightlifting, monostructural, triplet, 4 time, that sort of thing, right? And then one of those other days, so these are the Tuesdays, Thursdays, and again, these are going to swap around, right? I like to do that. We'll bounce back and forth between longer, right, aerobic style training where we're getting the heart rate up some, but for a longer duration, right? And then real peak power output sprint type of stuff, right? So through the winter, the bike and the rower are really our primary tools for that sort of effort. But we have this lovely opportunity throughout these beautiful summer months where we can get outside and we can actually sprint, right? So we did some 100-meter sprints on Tuesday. That was one example of that, right? We play around with a lot of that sort of stuff. And then Fridays will still be the same, right? Fridays we usually do an Olympic lift, and then we do a partner team style of thing, right? Which ends up being kind of interval-based a lot of times using some of the other implements that I can't really program for a bigger class, but we can get away with it when we're, kind of in here to have some fun and get a little fitter in the process. But that's kind of where I've settled in with that. So the way I've got it laid out, I've ended up adding in what amounts to like, if I just took like touch points, what I took away is probably taking away two, higher heart rate events, but in their place, I've kind of been able to add in, almost like 4 to 6 kind of strength or the like focused things, whether it's heavy strength, whether it's kind of what I call the maintenance mobility, prehab type of work, or I already mentioned this, the hypertrophy type of stuff, right? Where the focus is actual muscle growth, right? So there's a big difference between training for the purpose of maximal strength and then training for the purpose of, this is why it's called bodybuilding, growing muscle, right? And I think both are important. And generally in a CrossFit program, there's a little more focused effort and thought going towards the strength side of that stuff. Being max lifts. The Olympic lifts specifically are these lifts that it's like, hey, if you have good timing, you have good positions, you have good speed, right? You have this power output. You can get a really long way without having outrageous like raw strength, right? Think like the power lifts, without having outrageous strength there. But all this stuff's important, right? If we do all of one and not the other, we create liabilities, right? And strength and even some of this bodybuilding type of stuff is really really good. And what I've seen in people is generally a big again, low hanging fruit type of thing, a opportunity, right, to get better and develop. So, and it's, I find it fun. I'll have to, once we get a few weeks into this, I'll have to ask people like, hey, do you enjoy this, right? I love lifting weights. I think it's fun. I also love just the gritty beat down, right? I get one round into this 5-round workout today, and I'm like, oh no, this is going to be bad. And part of me is like, let's go, right? Maybe something's wrong with me. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's where we're at here. Oh, I had a listener question, but I'm going to save it because I'm meeting with him tomorrow to talk about it, and maybe after I talk with him, I'll bring it back into here and discuss it on the podcast. You know what I should have done? I should have just had him come here and be on the friggin' video with me.